A cost contribution arrangement, or CCA, is a contractual framework where a multinational enterprise pools its internal resources and risks to achieve mutual benefits. The expected outcome of this framework relies on strict proportionality. If a subsidiary contributes 20% of the resources, they must receive exactly 20% of the resulting output. This requirement introduces a complex transfer pricing problem. Tax authorities demand precise mathematical proof that these internal contributions are correctly valued to satisfy statutory requirements. Corporations often operate under a flawed assumption. They believe that simply tallying and sharing the raw financial expenses of a joint project satisfies their compliance obligations. The OECD transfer pricing guidelines firmly reject this premise. Measuring internal contributions purely by the cost to produce them distorts the economic reality of the transaction. To correct this, the OECD enforces the arm's length principle. The arm's length principle is a mandatory valuation standard dictating that internal transactions within a company must be priced exactly as if they were taking place between independent, competing businesses. Failing to measure contributions at their true open market value completely severs the alignment between what a subsidiary pays and what it receives. That gap is an immediate trigger for massive audit risks and strict tax penalties. Consider a hypothetical setup. Company A and Company B belong to the same multinational group and exchange shared services through a centralized CCA hub. Over a single cycle, Company A provides 30 units of Service 1 to the group. Company B provides 20 units of Service 2. This ledger shows their expenses. At $100 per unit, the total CCA cost is $5,000. Since both consume 50%, each bears a $2,500 burden. Company B contributed $2,000, so they owe A $500. This calculation contains a fatal statutory flaw. It assumes that both services are equally valuable on the open market, simply because they cost the same amount to produce. Equating cost to value inside a shared arrangement creates an artificial economic environment. It fails the OECD's baseline test for fairness because independent businesses do not trade services at cost. We correct the ledger using open market values. A service is $120 per unit, B's is $105. The pool's value is $5,700. Split evenly, each contributes $2,850. Therefore, B owes A $750. This higher payment perfectly mimics external market conditions. If Company B bought these exact services from a third-party vendor, they would pay the market premium, not the raw production cost. A common counterargument is that cost valuation is permissible if the open market markup is identical for both services, rendering them equally valuable per unit. The OECD rejects this. Even with identical unit values, calculating purely at cost yields incorrect balancing payments because of the disparity in the volume of units each company provides to the pool. For any non-routine transaction, open market value must be the sole statutory metric used to balance the arrangement. The arm's length principle strictly requires multinational enterprises to treat internal transfers with the exact same rigorous valuation as external market trades. The OECD does recognize a pragmatic exception to the strict value rule, categorized as low-value services. If contributed services have minimal market markups, such as basic administrative or IT support, tax authorities permit cost valuation strictly as an administrative shortcut to reduce compliance burdens.
However, applying this shortcut to complex arrangements, specifically intangible development CCAs, is illegal and exposes the enterprise to severe tax adjustments. This split-screen flowchart breaks down the OECD's two-step method for high-value IP arrangements. Step 1 dictates participants share routine operational expenses, covering day-to-day administrative overhead. Step 2 requires distinct payments compensating for any highly valuable pre-existing assets brought into the arrangement. The two-step method protects national tax bases. It isolates the sharing of routine administrative expenses from the capitalization of highly valuable pre-existing intangibles, ensuring proper tax is paid on proprietary IP. We can observe the two-step method operating at scale in a massive intangible development CCA spanning a 15-year life cycle. In this scenario, Company A provides pure financial funding. They commit $100 million per year for the first 5 years of the project. Company B executes the work. They contribute specialized R&D staff, execution capability, and critical pre-existing intellectual property to drive the research. This timeline charts the development cycle. After a 5-year funding period, the IP generates $550 million in annual global profits for 10 years. The arrangement grants Company A territorial rights to the rest of the world, yielding $330 million annually. To evaluate Company A's funding, we calculate its risk-adjusted return, evaluating expected profit by factoring in specific financial hazards. The math reveals a stark discrepancy. A's return caps at $110 million annually, yet they extract $330 million. This massive profit gap is the exact uncompensated value of Company B's pre-existing IP. To maintain arm's-length compliance, Company A must make a balancing payment to Company B equal to that $220 million difference. There is an absolute prerequisite that underpins this entire intangible development model: the requirement of functional substance. Consider a scenario where the funding participant acts solely as passive capital, lacking internal expertise to manage the project's risks or evaluate the R&D decisions. The OECD strictly requires functional risk control. Functional risk control is the active in-house capability to assess, manage, and make critical decisions about the specific hazards assumed in the arrangement. The statutory penalty here is absolute. Without functional risk control, a funding participant is legally barred from claiming any share of the profitable IP outputs. Capital allocation without the functional capability to manage risk renders a subsidiary's participation in a CCA void under OECD scrutiny. We have tracked the OECD's logic from the allocation of shared routine services directly up to high-stakes, multi-million-dollar intangible IP development. The pure cost model repeatedly fails compliance tests because it blindly treats all inputs as equal, ignoring the harsh realities and premiums of the open market. The value model is the single unifying statutory logic of OECD Chapter 8. Market value is the only metric that accurately reflects economic reality. Balancing payments are not mere accounting true-ups. They are the exact legal mechanisms tax authorities use to enforce the arm's-length principle. Structuring a compliant multinational enterprise requires the rigorous mathematical alignment of capital, intellectual property, and functional capability. Mastering the OECD's cost contribution framework aligns a group's tax footprint with its actual value drivers. This alignment ensures that profits are taxed where the intellectual and financial heavy lifting occurs, protecting the multinational's economic substance against global audit scrutiny.